Hello, thank you for joining us for what I expect to be an awesome session amongst a number of awesome sessions that are being held at CDCon 2022. Today, I have an esteemed panel of all shapes, sizes, colors, beliefs, experiences, and perspectives to talk about DX design, diversity experience as an accelerator. I'll go a little bit more into the topic of why we chose this term DX design, but needless to say, diversity has been a key and important topic in the software development and delivery space for a number of years now. I actually compliment the Continuous Delivery Foundation and the Linux Foundation on driving these discussions, but surprise, surprise, I still think we have a lot of work to do. And I think it's important that we actually kind of pull out of the scientific, academic, and share our experiences so we can figure out how to better other experiences. With that said, I'd like to take a moment to introduce our panelists, or rather have our panelists introduce themselves. So first, I'd like to start with Zainab.
Thank you, Brian. My name is Zainab Daodu, and I'm a technical writer with Telium. Also the open source programs manager for She Could Africa, a nonprofit organization focused on empowering women in tech across Africa. Diversity is personal for me because starting out in tech, I started out much later than I would have started because of the whole idea of it's not for women, or women can handle the whole stress and all that is involved in tech. But when I found out this wasn't true and I was able to get in, I made up my mind to try and help as many women as I can get into the tech space and to improve diversity. So that's why I'm here today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. And then Marky Jackson, unfortunately, who was a panelist I was excited to have on board. He has deep community experience, deep software engineering experience. Unfortunately, Marky was sick this morning, woke up with an extremely high fever. We have the best wishes for him. And he will be joining us in the chat to answer questions, just won't be part of the panel. Next, Hope Lynch. Hope, can you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I'm working at CloudBees. I'm in product marketing. I have been in technology for a number of years. My technology career started at the help desk. That's how far it's gone. So everything from help desk to networking. I was a web developer for a time. I've managed systems engineering teams. I've been a product manager. My last product management role was for an IoT platform. So really anything touching technology, I'm interested in it and want to find out more about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Hope. Looking forward to it. And then we have, last but not least, Anne-Marie Fred. Anne-Marie.
Thanks, Brian. So yeah, I'm, is my sound working?
Yeah, we hear you good. We hear
okay,
you great.
Good. Yep. Great, okay. I'm a senior principal software engineer at Red Hat, and a bit about my background, I was a software developer for more than 20 years. Started out in research. I worked in pervasive computing. I was a consultant. I did web application, mobile, cloud computing, website development. Now I work on developer tools. I was a HR manager for a few years. I've done DevOps things for about 10 years, and I've also been a security focal for the last 3 or 4 years. So just, yeah, like a lot of you, just a wide variety of experience over the years. And I love mentoring and supporting other people in technology. That's always been something I've been passionate about. And one interesting story about my own experience with diversity, when I went to university, it was probably 20% of my class was women. When I went into the DevOps field, I very clearly remember my first DevOps conference about 10, 12 years ago. And I was like, man, I feel like I'm really a minority. And I looked around the room and I counted. There were 100 people in the room and 2 of us were women. You know, so yeah, I was a distinct minority at that point. I feel like it's improving over the years, but it's definitely something where, you know, I want to kind of give a lot of people a leg up if I can.
Awesome. Thank you, Anne Marie. And then I'll introduce myself. I'm Brian Dawson. I will be the moderator, which I tend to love driving discussion, but then I also like to talk. So that could be a problem. We'll see how that tension goes. You know, look, I myself grew up in a technology hotbed. I grew up in Palo Alto and Silicon Valley. But interestingly enough, I didn't really get engaged actively with technology and software engineering until later in my life. And I'll share a bit when we go into the experience portion of this discussion. But as I play back and digest kind of the what and why, honestly, even though I was in the center of it and had every opportunity, I didn't map myself to it. I didn't feel included. And so that's just one aspect of what I'm really interested in encountering and improving on. A bit on my background. I am engaging in this panel currently as a Ortelius board member. I also am head of partner relations at Ripple, a blockchain based company. And I have worked across the spectrum like Anne Marie and Hope, across the spectrum of software development and delivery. And I've arrived at describing myself as a technologist that is focused on optimizing software development and delivery with a particular focus or care for the human element, right? Because humans are involved in all software development and delivery. Well, thank you all. I am excited to dig into it. Real quick before we get into the topics and really learn and hear from y'all, I just wanted to, sort of revisit and dig a little bit more into the goal. So sort of the thought here with DX design has to do with the fact that we as engineers are people that deliver software or technology-based products, do, or at least we should, have a particular focus on UX, user experience, right? We've moved beyond UI thinking to end-to-end user experience thinking. And in fact, we've even started to talk about how do we support diverse user bases, right? I still think we have a long way to go there. So the idea here is diversity is really a matter of everybody's individual experiences, right? So as community members, team members, managers, how do we design for a positive DX diversity experience such that it can drive community engagement, growth, and team performance? And really, what I'm hoping for the panelists to do here is have honest and frank, maybe even vulnerable sharings about their experiences and insights on D&I, and use those experiences then to move into a discussion around what did we learn, what are our suggestions for driving positive outcomes. Okay. So to start, I'd like to level set a bit. I always like to level set. And I'd like to get a thought from the panelists. I have my own that I'll maybe tack in on the end. I see Hope smiling, like, when does Brian not have his own opinion? But what is diversity? Why does it matter in the technology or software development and delivery space? And I'm going to stop the share for a sec so we can focus on the group here. And you know what? I'm going to, start sort of left to right. Hope,
yeah.
How do you define diversity?
For me, diversity is, at the basis, it is a difference, right? Something's different than something else. And bringing in those differences is important. Some people I've talked to in the past, they compare it to cooking, right? If you're cooking something and you're just using salt or you're just using pepper, you're probably not going to get something that tastes that great. But if you bring in a lot of other seasonings, flavors, ingredients, right, you're going to have something that's really fantastic. And also the first example that comes to mind that I may not relay exactly accurately around why is diversity important in software development. The conversations I know within the last couple of years around artificial intelligence and the bias that had been built in to some AI programs. Why was that bias built in? Because the people who were building the programs were all basically the same type of people, overwhelmingly male, overwhelmingly white. So when they are building the programs, looking at the algorithms, there was not a thought about, do I need to consider something else? So, and those algorithms, if you take that out to, let's say, a worst case scenario, can impact people in their everyday lives, right? Do you get approved for financing? Do you get opportunities to have certain jobs if you are being put through a screening tool that AI is looking at? So diversity in software, I think, touches everyone.
Awesome. And I would chime in. And of course, anybody else, again, let's have an open discussion. So feel free to jump in. I love the call out on AI. I think in particular, while it seems very minor, I was so excited to buy this little DJI Spark drone because it had image recognition. You could send it away. This is part of my, tech geek. And I have not been able to use that gesture recognition feature because it wasn't tuned for my color of hand, right? And just to underscore, Hope, like you say, all right, that's pretty trivial or innocuous. You could argue the thing was $300, so I don't know if it's quite trivial, right? But that could have to do with banking. That can have to do with, I don't know, tolls, face recognition or identification for crime reduction or mitigation, right? Anybody else?
So for me, diversity is about being able to bring in as many perspectives as you can into like an environment that we know is non-inclusive by default, because that's just the truth. And yeah, I was going to, as Hope mentioned, in software development, I don't think you can have a great product without diversity, because how do you intend to serve people that you know nothing about, you aren't involved with in any way? Because I feel like the easiest way for you to make impact in different communities is just by having representatives of those communities involved in your organization. So, and with that, you're able to, get different perspective, you're able to get ideas around. I mean, what I am saying is not what the next person is going to see. So when you have that many perspective and that many ideas in the room, you're bound to, have a more productive team. You're bound to, build more reliable products, just as you mentioned, products that can recognize everybody and not just some certain color of people. So yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, but wait, so we're software engineers. We're building technical product. This is an analytical endeavor. It really doesn't matter that we have diverse people. We just need the best people that can develop the software, right? And if they happen to be white and male, or all myopic, that's all that really matters, right? And it looks like Anne-Marie, you're going to agree with me, right?
Yeah, I just have a story. Like we, in our Call for Code project, we were trying to make some software that would help public defenders, right? And we thought we had it all figured out in our heads. We're like, oh yeah, we're going to have a website that you can go to while you're talking to your client in the prison, and it's going to provide you data that you need at the time. And until we actually went and talked to the public defenders, and like, you're lucky if you have a laptop at all, right? You're lucky if you have a notebook. when you go into
Right.
that room. I mean, you know, we just make stupid assumptions sometimes as software developers. So.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think that's, and I love that you said that to comment for a sec, because yeah, when we talk DX, right? When we start with UX discovery, we have a UX team, we're a product manager. What do? Right? We go out and we interview our potential customers to understand what their needs and experiences are, right? Well, you know, I'm going to make the case that if we acknowledge, as y'all say, that diversity is important, and we're looking to build a diverse team, and we want positive DX, then we got to understand what people's experiences are. So hopefully that's what we're doing here today. I want to ask y'all another question that we didn't get into, though, and I think Hope maybe you kind of preempted it, but so is diversity about race? Is it really particularly about people of color? Is diversity about gender? I expect we're going to learn more when we get into our experiences here. Is it about age? Any particular thoughts on should it be defined as narrow? Should it be defined as wide?
I feel personally it should be as wide as possible. And I'm going to use another example. The company that I love, that to me demonstrates a novel way today, really, of embracing diversity in hiring for product development is IDEO in California. They bring in intentionally very young people, very old people, people with various backgrounds, various levels of enablement, right? So that when they all are working on a product, everyone is looking at it with different eyes. But the challenge too, though, one of which they have solved pretty well, is when you have these different people at the table, are they actually going to be listened to, right?
Yes.
That is the thing. So having a diverse group of people is important, but making sure you have a mechanism where everyone's input is actually heard and they have a voice. But IDEO is a great demonstration of taking diversity beyond your ethnicity and beyond your gender.
Awesome. Phenomenal. And I think you just set us up for the perfect segue to get into topic 2. And this is experiences, where I'd like to spend some more time and sort of prod, and let's open up a bit, right, in terms of kind of that UX discovery, that DX discovery. So I'm curious to hear, what each of your individual experiences are with diversity within your careers, or of course the lack of, right? Negative, positive experiences, lessons learned. What were some outcomes that you saw? And so I'd love to get your thoughts on this. I'm also extremely eager to share some of my thoughts.
So I'm going to start. For this one, I've had to deal with like a couple of issues like in my career because of one, my location, where I was located. I used to live in, I was born in Nigeria, and that was where I started out my tech career. And when I was ready to leave the first organization I worked with, it was, first of all, difficult for me to get a good role because of where I was located at. I got a lot of scenarios where organizations were like, oh, we think you'll be a good fit, but we are not hiring from Nigeria. So that really affected me a lot. And the truth is I wasn't able to fix that. I am currently in the UK and I have a really good job that I probably might not have gotten if I was still located in Nigeria. That's the first. The second is, even from the interview process, like I've, had to go through a couple of interviews, and the truth is, I don't think I have been interviewed by a person of color.
Wow.
I don't think so.
Wow.
I don't think I have. And I have gone through like numerous processes. You have some organizations where you have like 5 steps, 5 stages, 4 stages, but I have not spoken with someone of color through all those stages in all those organizations. And I feel like this is really, really important to try as much as possible to make the hiring team as diverse as possible, to include at one stage or the other, even if not at the technical stage, maybe when you're assessing cultures or values, things like that. At one stage, there you should try to make the panel or the interviewers as diverse as possible. And okay, fast forward to even getting a job, like a lot of organization, I found that amongst all my colleagues, I'm just the only one. It's not like the organization is not okay. They try to make the environment, but I mean, it will feel really great if you had like, you know, other people like you know, amongst the team, you know, people who understood, you know, your jokes or your sense of humor, things like that within the team. It really helps a lot, because I find that a lot of women are not able to deliver as much as they should be, or not able to speak up, or not free to speak up and share their ideas because they are the only one in the room, you know, or the only color in the room. So they are not so comfortable. And you see when people are creating circles, when they're trying to, they tend to subconsciously or unconsciously go for people who are like them. And at the end of the day, you kind of feel left out and things like that. That's where you have things like unconscious bias and things like that. So I feel like when it comes to diversity, it's not just about age. It should be as wide as possible, as Hope mentioned. And through all the process, through every process, hiring, you know, in the community, you should try to make the environment as inclusive as possible, try to make the team as diverse as possible, so that you can have that welcoming environment for everyone.
Awesome. Yeah. And, you know, anybody jump in at any other time, but, you know, I will say that I have gotten into, well, first, actually, I'll lead in this way. It was a discussion we had offline. I'll be perfectly frank. I just turned 49. I'm effectively calling myself 50, right? I remember early in my career in gaming, and it started at PlayStation, feeling like the young whiz kid, right? I could do it all. I was climbing up. I'm now experiencing a new dimension of kind of that bumping up against diversity and inclusion in the dimension of age, right? But with that, one of the things that I feel like I'm arriving at, and I think some additional wisdom I have, that I worry, you know, with some unconscious ageism or age bias that is being practiced, I can't quite as well share with my team members. And that's the importance of culture and really how to effectively interact with people to make them feel psychologically safe, right? To build a culture where you have a level of empathy and accommodation for others. And so I have started, Zainab, which you know, you really triggered for me is when you talk about not being interviewed by people of color. As I understand, most organizations and technology orgs and teams have a lot of work to do, but I do interview for culture. And as a key part of interviewing for the culture, I look for signals of either diversity and or a healthy disposition around the importance of diversity, right? And I recommend everybody kind of before you join a team, evaluate on that dimension, right? And ask, right? What is your diversity profile?
You
anyway,
know,
yeah.
One thing you make me think of, well, two things you make me think of, and I'll try to remember both. But one, culture, so important. But one of the traps I have seen at other companies I've worked at is they will reject a candidate. They weren't a culture fit. But the culture fit that they are talking about is I am looking at myself and my team, and they don't really seem to fit in with me, right? They don't have the same hobbies.
I don't want to go have beer with them or sit down and pair program all day with them, right?
Exactly. So the culture has to be curated at the organization, right? It has to be an intentional organizational culture, not just an incidental culture because you went to college at a certain place and you hired someone else who went to that same college and someone else who knew someone else who went to that same school. Now you are all saying, you know, this is our culture, and your culture is talking about the game on the weekend at the college you all went to, right? That's very exclusionary. And as far as not seeing people who look like you during interviews, wow, I've had that experience a lot. But one way that can be tough too is I was at an organization, they were trying to do a good thing. They really, really were. They were asking me to help with interviews. There was a reason why they were asking me to help with interviews.
Yes.
I totally understood why they were asking me to help with interviews, but I had to have a conversation with them that at a certain point, it started to feel like tokenism, right? So make more of an effort to diversify your staff, actually diversify your staff versus just having me in the room to say, hey, look, here it is. We have someone who doesn't look like everybody else. But they eventually got it together, which was great. But there's a little bit of a slippery slope on each of those sides, depending on who's in the room trying to do the work.
Yeah, and Anne-Marie, can I ask? Sorry, it looks like you had something queued up you were going to say. I do have a question for the group, but over to you first.
Okay. Yeah, just real quick. Another way that I found that we were accidentally filtering people out when I was interviewing. I interviewed a lot of people over the years, and admittedly, a couple mistakes we made. One was we used to give people take-home assignments to do, right? Like, take this home over the weekend and do it. You know what we were filtering out? We're filtering out everybody who has challenges at home and everybody who has families to take care of, right?
Right. Another dimension we don't classify as a primary dimension, but we lose out. Yeah, great call.
Yeah, exactly. And one of our interview questions I remember was something around like, what do you do in your free time? And, you know, people were looking for an answer along the lines of, I read all the tech journals or whatever, right? It was cringeworthy on introspection. And the reason that we finally realized that we were doing this is because we got together a diverse working group and we sat down and we talked about, here's how we're interviewing, here's how we can make it better, right? But we didn't see it at the time.
Well, I'll like to share an admission, and then I have a question I'd like to ask too, an extension of Hope's thing. I think look, I could say I value diversity. I'm empathetic. I value humans, but I'm also not perfect, right? And I have my biases and weaknesses. So, I'll give a shout out to my friend Karen Taggart. I was around on the circuit, sort of giving talks. And I forgot how this analogy came up. I guess I came from like a focus group or a panel in LA, and then I flew out to DC and I stood on stage at a DevOps conference. And I used an analogy, and I'm going to get this poorly about, you have an old man on, you have this dude driving down the freeway in a red Ferrari running to go really fast. And there's an old lady driving really slow in front of them. And it was some analogy for velocity and software development and delivery. But I'm assuming y'all already detected the problem with that, right? And it was a bias, it was a programming, but it was funny because it was a really diverse room. One of the things I love about tech in DC, females, people of color, different ages. And someone just stood up. I think it was Karen, and raised their hand, or she prompted someone next to her, like, wait, Brian, stop me mid-talk, right? So the one thing I want to call that out for, because we'll stay on this for a minute, is just I think that experience taught me what I've also learned outside of the professional world is that I got to realize I'm on a journey myself. We all have to realize that we have room for growth and kind of evaluate how we're interacting with others, how we're viewing the world, and what biases are we bringing to the table, right? Can I ask, and Anne-Marie, I'm going to ask you off of what Hope said, right? I think as we focused on diversity, and really, there's been a big emphasis post summer of 2020 on bringing more people of color into the field. There's been a big a big or a positive but conspicuous focus on gender diversity. We still have a lot of work to do. I'm curious, Anne-Marie, have you ever been in a situation where you feel like you've had to be, there's some tokenism, people are grabbing you because you're the woman with a technical background that they can bring in a conversation? Granted, I did a bit of that here, but I'm guilty. So I think the answer is yes, but have you experienced that?
Yes, I've shared Hope's experience that I feel like I'm constantly interviewing people for one thing, which again, it's not bad, but let's bring more people into the interviewing fold as well. And I think sometimes it's probably easier for me to get accepted as a conference speaker, for example, but I'm just going to kind of like lean into that. And I'm going to be out there, right? Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen it too much, but it definitely exists. And yeah, there are times when I feel like I'm there because I'm a woman, but maybe they're not going to listen to what I'm saying, right? That's the main thing. Like I had to go to special training to learn to be super assertive in meetings, right? So that I could be heard, right?
Wow. Yeah. Any other thoughts on that? And thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and I guess I want to ask, as we sort of dig into the experience, can any of y'all think of, I'm going to lean on a negative and a positive before we sort of move on to solutions. Has anybody here ever felt marginalized? And again, it's not griping. It's not whether it was a reality or not. But could you share an experience where you felt marginalized on whatever aspect of your unique self was marginalized? I'd love to hear it.
I feel like I keep jumping in, but I have so many examples.
No, you're saving the audience from me because I'll do this all solo. Right.
But I don't think I ever told you about this. But when I was hired to be the product manager for the IoT platform and to manage the platform team, there was another product manager there that I was supposed to be transitioning work from, right? Mm-hmm. so that I could take the team over. So I get there, I'm there, a few days in, and everyone has been very cordial. They've spoken, they've said hello, but I'm just kind of hanging out. There are meetings happening. I'm not in the meetings. And I'm like, And this is in office. It's not remote. This is in office. So at that time, my desk was down the hall because they were working on reconfiguring desks. So teams sat together, but I was down the hall. So I thought, okay, I'll take a little time for onboarding, et cetera, work through that. But then I would have conversations with the product manager and I would say, hey, are you ready for me to take it over? Oh, well, I just wanted to give you more time, And I said, that's not the way I work. I show up, I get started. So I'm ready. Well, this continued, and all male, every single one. They'd never had a woman as a product manager before. And so they would sort of see me and they'd speak, but then they would have conversations among themselves. So when they decided that they were going to move the desks and they finally came to the day to move the desks, they put my desk right behind his. And I thought, okay, this is going to be a good thing. Mm-hmm. Well, knowing that I was in the role, people were still going and having conversations.
Oh,
with
wow.
him.
Oh, so
And
you actually got to witness it right there in front of you.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there and I think to myself, this is not going to work out. So I did not make it confrontational, but I had a conversation with my manager and I said, look, this is what's happening. I don't need you to do anything, but there might be some ripples. So I'm just letting you know in advance in case anything comes up. So the way I ended up managing it was I started setting meetings, let's have a meeting and let's talk about the why of the product. What are we actually trying to do? Let's go through, some brainstorming exercises. We did that. I bought pizza for backlog grooming meetings. I was doing the attract more bees, flies with honey, right? Situation. And eventually it worked, but it took time. And one person was very honest with me later, and I will give him credit. He's very blunt. After he got to know me, and he said, honestly, I've never seen anybody that looked like you. He meant woman and Black, right? In this role, and automatically assumed I probably wasn't that technical.
Wow.
And that has been an assumption, even when working in technology over the course of my career. People are always, I just didn't think you were very technical.
And not everybody is honest enough to tell you why they didn't. They'll just say I didn't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But then once we got into it and we started having conversations, and they were like, oh my God, wait a minute, you actually do know a lot of things. Yeah, I actually do. So I've been in that situation several times. I think easier to make progress sometimes in a non-technical area, especially for women and women of color, because they automatically assume you're not technical. Let's put you on something else. But when you are a technical person, sometimes for me anyway, it has felt like I've had to offer a lot more proof.
Yeah. You bring up an interesting thing, and please, Anne-Marie, Zainab, jump in at any time. Something, and I'll be, in terms of Frank, and stay off mute, so jump in a minute, I'll share this. We often in the United States, in the Black community, and it's not discussed outwardly a lot, so I'm going to do it here. We talk about the Black tax, right? Which there's a gender tax, and when we talk about being called in, okay, Zainab, you say you need more diverse interviewers, but we haven't addressed our diversity problem. So now we lean on one person to do all of it. That's one form of the tax, right? Another form of the tax is, well, look, ideally, it's hard integrating into any new group, right? And there's already, I think, in an ideal world, the responsibility for me as a new person to kind of lean in. But gosh, I expect people to also lean into me, right? Now, when there's biases, age, gender, color, race, in between it, now that usually doesn't mean people are going to reach out to me. And if they do, it may not be in a way that actually makes me feel safe and secure. Often then I have a new tax. I have to buy people pizza. I have to, take up less space so people are less threatened by me. Right. So just one thing I'd like to call out in terms of sharing my experience, and then Zainab, I'll hand it to you, is everybody be aware that a number of people that are different than trunk, so to say, are feel like we pay a tax. Right. But Zainab, I'm so sorry. I thought that was going to be 10 seconds, but me being me, it wasn't.
No problem. So for me also, there's just a lot, but I think there's just two that really stood out. And the first is while I was in school, I could have started out in tech much earlier if the environment was okay and, everything was okay when I was in school, because we had students then that had study groups, when they wanted to get into more technical content, because the lecturers just do like an overview and all that. So a couple of male students, wanted to get more into it, and they held study groups where they left the ladies out because they felt
Oh,
it
wow.
wasn't something that we could handle. Like
Wow.
it was just the assumption they felt like. And I think another thing that even made my experience more was the fact that I went to like an Islamic university. So there was this ideology that these ladies, at the end of the day, you're not going to use this school for anything. Your parents just want you to have the certificate, and afterwards you get married and things like that. So they weren't really taking us seriously. And it affected me for a while, because I actually believed at some point, I was like, I can't do this, it's too hard. But when I graduated, I started looking for a job, and somehow I stumbled into tech, and I was able to overcome that ideology that is too difficult for me or other ladies out there to do. So that's the first. And I think the second was while I was working, like at one of the organization I worked, like I've been wanting to switch to a different role, like DevOps role, for a while. Like I have much interest, and I've worked with them like on part-time basis, but I wanted to switch fully. So I was told that, okay, there's no problem. Once an opening comes up, you'll be able to move in. And opening came up, and I was kind of like put there like tentatively just to try out and all that. And I started working there, and I remember that was when I was pregnant for my son. And then the person I was reporting to was trying to talk me out of taking up the role on different occasions, because it was like, this role is too demanding. Are you sure you can do it? The fact that you're expecting a kid, would your husband be convenient with you joining meetings late night? And when you give birth, you're going to have to take maternity leave. You know how important this role is, what's going to happen that 3 months, and so many, things like that, trying to make me step out of that role and not. But I was determined that I wanted to do this, and I was like, I can do it, and I'm going to do it. And I was in that role till I actually left the organization. Unfortunately, I wasn't even there till I gave birth, but I was like, if I was going to give birth there, I was going to be in that role until I give birth, take my maternity leave, and come back to the role. That was what I made up my mind I was going to do. But I didn't even stay there till then. So yeah,
thanks for sharing that. And I think there's an interesting outcome that I'll probably get into more later. Look, you were a vested, smart, valuable employee. One person's view and bias, and maybe it projected the organizational view. You know what? You just churned an employee that could have stayed on and delivered value. And just business and sense, whether you're empathetic or not, that costs, right? So with that is actually a good segue to the next topic. And I do want to say, actually, before we move to this next topic, I myself, and I'm sure, the entire panel could get into a number of really sort of eye-opening experiences, positive and negative, that we've had around diversity or lack of within our team. Obviously, there's not enough time to do it all. Audience members, please, in chat, please share your experiences. Or if you're interested in learning more about ours, please hear them. And I want to underscore, look, this isn't, we are all, I think, and I would beg to say, continually and progressively successful professionals in this space. So these aren't complaints. It's not pointing fingers. We continue to march ahead and try to help our communities, teams, projects, and organizations be better. But back to what we said at the top, this is our individual experience, our individual view, our individual belief. So thank you all for sharing that. Now, we started to hit upon a bit of it before, but I'd like to move to topic 3. What are some things? And we can kind of go round robin here, whoever wants to jump in first. But what can we as a community do to better design for diversity? How do we ensure a positive experience, for, to use Hope term earlier, for a wide range of dimensions of diversity, right? Whether I'm in Germany, or Nigeria, or I'm 50 or I'm 25. Do y'all have, ideas or even better sort of proven experiences that you can lend to our audience to help to help the community be better? Anybody want to jump in?
Okay, so I'm going to speak from the point of open source communities, because I work a lot with open source communities as a personal contributor, and also as part of my work with ShareCode Africa. And personally, I'm not a DI expert, but I think personally, organizations and communities need to be more intentional about this. I feel like a lot of communities and organizations actually talk more than they actually do. A lot of people are saying things, yeah, we want diversity. Yes, we want our community to be inclusive. We are inviting diverse, but they're not actually putting in the work or creating that inclusive environment, or that environment that is comfortable and inclusive. And there are a couple of reasons why I'm saying this. The first is that as the open source programs manager for ShareCode Africa, what we are trying to do is, to encourage more women to get involved into open source. And every day we hear stories from these ladies or these women that they have the interest, they want to be part, but they just don't see that environment for them. They just don't see like the community actually needs them. They feel like, okay, when I join, the way they are talking, I don't even know what to say, I don't even know how to come in and things like that. So one of the ways we try to solve this is, okay, we try to create programs and try to like bring these ladies to these communities, try to bridge that communication gap. We try to serve as like the middle women. But then imagine a situation where you have application from over 300 ladies who want to participate, and you have just 5 open source communities showing interest in participating in these programs. So where are the open source communities that keep saying they want diverse and inclusive communities? Where are the organizations, the community that want to welcome diverse contributors? Why are they not participating in such programs? Because I believe like this is one of the easiest way for you to, take that step towards having that diverse community. So, which comes to my first point, organizations need to be more intentional about, having diverse communities. There are a lot of programs out there that are already, because we in the underrepresented communities have seen that there's this gap, and we on our own are trying to come up with ways that we can bridge this gap, but we can't do it alone, because we are trying to infiltrate, or we're trying to penetrate this non-inclusive community. So without support from the community, it's not going to be possible. Yeah. So it's very, very important that these communities support this. So I'll just stop there. There's a lot I could have said, but I would just like to give the other panelists.
And thank you. No, the only thing I was going to say is that is one of the key links, and a lot of the other things we can talk about we need to do, or we talked about earlier, right? Mm-hmm. In being intentional about seeking out involvement in your open source communities of diverse, engaging with ShareCode Africa. That's the first domino, right? And having diversity within your team. Anne-Marie.
Just one thing, one takeaway, I guess, one thing that's helped me for sure, and I think we could do more of it, is sponsorship, like not just mentoring, but actually grabbing other people of promise who we see and pulling them up with us, right? Mm-hmm. Like I know when I was trying to become a senior technical staff member at IBM, they said, we see a lot of women who are eminently technically qualified, but they need like that last push to get over the edge. Like they need to get their name out there with the executives so that they're known, and they need to have these reference letters. Like I had to have 13 reference letters written up by different people across the organization, right? In order to do that. And so we needed to kind of have people who are actually helping them get over that push. And I think we need to look at that more as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Hope.
I had to stop and think of another one because Anne Marie, that was one I was like, oh my gosh, that's the one I was going to say. Let me think of something else. But one of the things though that I have seen, building the community is building the pipeline, not just looking at people who are already sitting there, who have already made the decision that they're going to work in technology. But everywhere I go, when I see anybody from an underrepresented group, if they're in high school, if they're in college, they're already in a program that they think that's the program they want to be in. My first question is, have you ever thought about technology? Oh my gosh, no, why not? Oh, well, I saw this television show, and on this TV show, it just looked miserable. Well, that's television, right? And helping them understand the various ways and the full range of opportunities that exist in technology. You don't have to be a developer, to necessarily be in technology. There are other avenues and other things you can do and other ways in. And maybe if you're in for a little while, you decide, you know what, maybe I do want to work in engineering. I do want to code. That's great. But not everyone, has to write code. Although everyone does have to write code, you know what I'm saying? But but it is something of there's some block there. There's a perception, if we could hire a PR company to go on, on a campaign and just help people see. There's a lot of fun involved. There's a lot of growth. There's a lot of great relationships that I've built. I mean, and I know this is my thing, so I love it, but there are a lot of qualified people who could be here. A lot of qualified people who could be here who, and my best analogy for it is when people say, oh, you know what? Well, they should just apply. To me, it's like if you're walking down a street and there are a lot of doors and people will say, oh, well, why didn't you come in? The door was unlocked. I can't tell which door is unlocked. Right. I don't know which door is unlocked. Right. And if I open the door, am I welcome? Right. You have to have some way to let people know that they can come in, that they're going to be welcomed and even have something prepared. So the thing for me is just building a better pipeline to bring more people in.
Yeah, I love that. And there's so many things I'd like to say here, but I think what I hear the three of y'all nail, with sponsorship, with deliberate engagement and outreach with diverse populations that want to get in, with addressing the pipeline problem, that's actually really fundamental, right? I think in a lot of ways, maybe sounding naive or overly optimistic, but I also feel sort of analytically this is the case, that starts to erode away at the problem, right? It starts to get them in. And I would add this as we get ready to wrap here soon, is that, we have to understand that we are at a time in life when the software we're creating and the technology we're creating is in the critical path of everybody's lives. So if we can get to the business need, but we have a moral obligation to consider those people when we develop software for them, right? To properly consider them, we need to establish practices in the way we develop and deliver software that brings diverse views to the table. Maybe they're not all engineers, but maybe we need to ensure that we develop transparently and do feature reviews before we go to, maybe Sam in accounting has a view, right, on the software, how the software works. And when we talk about whether you're a banking mobile app, whether you're Face ID like ID me, whether you're embedded systems in your car smart dashboard, right? They all affect our lives, and they're all affected on one end, right? So that's what is our objective. Middle, if we want to achieve velocity in software delivery, the biggest point of friction, the fuzzy fungible point, is human to human. So we need to make sure we optimize for that, because we can create all the CI/CD pipelines we want, all the automated processes, but you're never going to get out of humans as the friction point. And look, for CEOs that often give lip service to this, don't just give lip service, because at the end of the day, this affects your bottom line. People that don't feel welcome, people that don't feel psychologically safe or like they're adding value or can contribute, they leave. That costs you money and time, right? So I think hidden in that are some things, we've all sort of shared some things we can do. I want to just do one other round, y'all, as we go to the thank you slide. And before I thank y'all, can I ask closing soundbite? Hope.
My closing soundbite is, number one, connect with me on LinkedIn. Love meeting new people. But number two, look at whatever is next, right? Look at what is that next horizon in technology. If you have not found your thing might be somewhere out on that bleeding edge, right? And don't be shy about going out there and engaging with it. I know early in my career, because I was so curious about things and tinkering with things, I sort of came into technology sideways, right? And it was because I saw a new shiny thing. I wanted to play with it. I wanted to check it out. Here I am, all these years later. So look for your thing in technology, and I'm pretty sure it exists. Awesome,
thank you. Can we go to Anne-Marie?
Kind of playing off what Hope says. I think, I think the most important aspect of a technologist is knowing how to learn, right? Knowing how to teach yourself new things. And so I think it's very important that when we're looking to bring people into our organizations, that's a key thing that we're looking for as well, is people who are open to learning, not necessarily people who are already experts.
Right. That's awesome. Thank you. Zainab?
Thank you. So for me, I'm just going to be speaking towards open source communities. I think it's very, very, considering the fact that you have like a lot of people within the community. It's not like an organization where you have to go through kind of like an interview process or something before you select the kind of people that come into the community. The open source community is not like that. So it's very important that communities need to put in more work into creating that inclusive environment. And this is beyond just having a code of conduct in your README file somewhere in GitHub repository. No, because a lot of open source community believe that once they have that, they are covered. But no, it doesn't stop there. They need to find ways to enforce this code of conduct and make the community a safe place and an inclusive place, a welcoming place for diverse contributors. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. And then, for mine, borrowing from Reed Hastings and some other people that have focused that are truly, I was going to say, we're not DEI experts. This is about our experience. If you want official advice, please seek out a certified DEI expert, but our view is our view. But that said, I've done a lot of reading around it. And I think one of the promptest things is, so first I'd say diversity is culture, culture is diversity. They're in a symbiotic relationship, inextricably combined, right? And culture is almost as simple as what you reward and what you discourage, right? And we all, not the female in the room, not the older person in the room, not the Black person in the room, but all of us have a responsibility to inspire, encourage, and support the diversity that we not want to see, but we need to see. So y'all, thank you so much for this time. I'm sure there's a lot we left on the table and covered, but do please reach out to us in chat. Anne-Marie, Hope, Zainab, I would love to continue this conversation between us offline because I really enjoyed it here.
Thank you, Brian, for inviting me.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.